up, everybody? It's DFS Dudes. It is Thursday, January 9th. Pretty good slate last night. A lot of action. Fun slate. Scoring was crazy. Not often does it line up like that, where there's a couple of games that are going to go absolutely bonkers and they're kind of obvious. You just kind of, like I talked about yesterday, you got to sort through the shit. And who can sort through the shit the best is typically who takes tournaments down. The mistake that I made yesterday, to be honest with you, was Grant. I really thought that Porter was a good play. And I think Porter would have been a really good play had Millsap not been ruled out. But just like I had talked about yesterday in the podcast, the guy to keep an eye on, I thought even with, Millsap, if he would have played, was Jeremy Grant. I just thought that Grant, because of Will Barton does get a lot of rebounds and he does dominate some usage. And I thought that the usage part would go to Jamal Murray. And I thought that kind of the nitty gritty stuff would go to Grant. And I thought Grant would be pretty safe from a minute standpoint. And then I think like 5 minutes before lock, Millsap gets rolled out. And instantly what I should have done, I was in the middle of building my last lineup for the 150. And what I should have done was finish building that lineup and then just blanket swapped out Porter for Grant. And I didn't. And that's the mistake I made last night. We're going to talk about my top lineup real quick last night and what it looked like. And then really the reason why you do multiple entries and why you do these 3-entry and 5-entry max tournaments. Because it's so difficult. It's so difficult to take down a 150 entry tournament in NBA. It's ridiculous how difficult it is. My best line last night, it's posted in Discord. If you haven't seen it, go to our Discord channel, check it out. Trae Young had 72.6. He was my point guard 1. Eric Bledsoe, 33.6. And I'm always going to find a way because I really believe in this. And I just don't – I don't think that this happens enough anymore. And I think there was a period of time where people really made an effort to get exposure to the last games on the slate. I don't think it happens enough anymore. I think people are content just building what they think is the best lineup and leaving this little box unchecked. I don't think it bothers people. They'll load up the 7 o'clock game, and if there's 4 games at 7 o'clock on a big slate, they'll load them all up, and then they'll just let it ride, sit on and sweat it out all night. And maybe that's where the term sweat came from, because you're trying to hold on. I refuse to be in that position with my lineups. I will find somebody in the last game is going to get points. And it's a matter of, can you fit somebody around what you're trying to do? You have to sacrifice something in what you're trying to do to get somebody in the late games. But the guy that I thought was too cheap, and I said it on the podcast yesterday, was Eric Bledsoe at 5.9 on FanDuel. I just thought he was way too cheap going against the Warriors to not be somewhat of a lock in your point guard 2 spot. So he's my point guard 2. Harden was the lock. I've gotten Discord the night before and said that tomorrow, being yesterday, would be the blanket chalk day for James Harden. We'll talk about what's going on tonight. I had Patrick McCaw at 30. He had 36.5. Really, Davis went off last night, and that's just how it works sometimes. The play was McCaw, in my opinion, because of all of the factors that you look at. It just happened that the game went to Davis a little bit. McCaw still had a great game, 13 points, 11 assists, and 5 rebounds for 36.5 fantasy points at a 3.7 price tag. It was 9x plus. Brandon Ingram, and anytime, look, Drew Holiday is their default point guard. Brandon Ingram's a high usage player as it is. And anytime that he's going to be out, that's Drew Holiday, I'm going to play Brandon Ingram. I don't care what kind of matchup it is, because he's going to dominate the ball. Kevin Knox at 3.5. I just thought with everybody that was out for the Knicks that this kid they drafted high would be would do something. And if this guy gets me 25 last night, we're taking down tournaments. We needed 14 or 15 more points out of this guy to really do something last night. I finished 22nd in the 150 with this line, but Knox returns value or gives me a 6-7x figure at his price tag. We may be sitting here talking about the 100,000 we took down last night. Instead, that's the way it works out. Aaron Gordon was a guy that I just kind of filled in there. I liked Gordon. He wasn't one of my top plays. I talked about him a little bit yesterday. This is kind of where I got screwed up a little bit, and I'll talk about the perfect lineup yesterday and what you could have had. But Grant and Capella filled out that roster, and I really was big on Capella yesterday. Another guy I thought was too cheap in a crush spot against Atlanta. He had 22 points, 22 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks for 59.4. So 407.8 is what that lineup returned. It's in Discord. You can take a look at it if you want. And really, that's where to take something down last night, the bottom of the lineup is where you really needed to be. And you need to have something like PJ Tucker, Grant, and Capella, or something like John Collins, Grant, and Portis. And you would have returned somewhere between 440 and 465. So that's last night. As a whole, with the podcast yesterday, I think that if you listened to the podcast yesterday, you should have had a pretty good idea on how to build your lineup out, the players that we were on, why we were on them, and how to build a lineup yesterday to be competitive. And you should have done fairly well if you followed the plays that we had. I mean, the lineup I just gave you is pretty much straight out of yesterday's podcast. So let's look at today. Today, a much shorter slate, only 4 games. And the major narrative here is that Joel Embiid is not playing tonight against Boston. I kid. The major narrative is that Russell Westbrook is going back to Oklahoma City tonight. And, what's his reception going to be? I mean, Westbrook didn't ask. It's not like he was complaining and crying, and he could have left in free agency. He didn't. He re-signed. I think it became very clear to Oklahoma City that once they traded Paul George out of there, that they needed to get rid of Russell Westbrook and find a way to rebuild. We talked about Chris Paul yesterday. I'll talk about him a little bit now. Chris Paul leads the league in clutch points. What are clutch points? Fourth quarter, 5 minutes or less left in the game, and your team has to be ahead by 5, no more than 5, or trailing by 5, no more than 5. So in a clutch spot, he leads the NBA in clutch points scored. He's their he's their all-star. I know Galigius Alexander is having a really good year, but Chris Paul is their all-star. A lot of people don't realize that James Harden was drafted by Oklahoma City. So James Harden was also in Oklahoma City. So it's not just a return for Westbrook, it is a return for Harden, albeit Harden is very far removed from his days in Oklahoma City. So Westbrook's at 8.7. This guy's going to be ridiculously owned because everybody wants to play the narrative and everybody wants to watch the game and everybody wants to watch what Russell Westbrook does. And if, there's players want their teammates to do well in these narrative spots. Don't get it twisted. They're not going in there like, oh yeah, it's just another game. They can say whatever they want. But what will be interesting is how much they force Westbrook to kind of take off. That'll be the interesting part to watch. When you start to force it, you can start turning it over. You can start missing shots, not getting the right opportunity, not running the offense correctly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Houston plays at a ridiculous pace. Their belief, if you sum it up in a nutshell, is before the shot clock gets to 14, they want a 3 or a dunk. That sums up in a nutshell what they're trying to accomplish. So, that yields, give the ball to Westbrook and let him, drive and dish like he did a lot in Oklahoma City when he was there. Capella's healthy, and I like stacking the 3 of them. Is there enough value to do that? That's what we'll have to figure out. So that's the last game on the slate, and we'll talk a bit about it at the end of this. But the first game of the slate is Cleveland at Detroit. A home and home. Literally the last game these two teams played was against each other. And it was in Cleveland. Derrick Rose went off from a scoring standpoint. 24 points, 7 assists, 3 rebounds, and a steal. He had 37.1. His price tag is up from 6.1 to 6.6 on FanDuel. Colin Sexton's price tag has climbed all the way up from 5,000 to 6,100. And I don't like him as much. I really don't. I think that his price has kind of exceeded the point where his average is 6x. You know, that's kind of what we're looking for. We're looking for these median price breaks, if you will, where their price and their average yields you 6x. Trying to find that balance. That's kind of par. If you know anything about the mortgage world, par would be pricing. It's even pricing. So that's what we're looking for. And Sexton at 30, I would say, is what, you know, I think on FanDuel is listed at 26.7 is his average fantasy points per game. He's at 6.1. That puts him at a 4x figure. And I think that 30 is really what you can kind of look for out of Sexton. So I would say he's close to that, you know, between 4.5 and 5x, and that's not a good play. In my opinion, it's not a good play. With the other point guards on the slate, you know, if Sexton was 5,000, I would lock him in because I don't think anybody would load him up still. Because he's been under the radar. He's playing shooting guard. He's listed as a point guard on FanDuel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Derrick Rose at 6.6, I think that he's right at that medium price tag where he can get you 36. Bruce Brown at 5.1 is interesting. There's not a shooting guard for Cleveland that you can look at. Their shooting guard is Colin Sexton. Jetty Osman at 4.6. Osman is the biggest victim of the lineup in Cleveland. Because last year, Colin Sexton was the point guard. Osman was kind of the 2/3. And now you've got Sexton playing the shooting guard, and Osman's really playing the small forward position. And he's been robbed of usage. He really has. He's not getting rebounds. He's scoring between, 8 and 22. He's playing between 26 and 36 minutes. But he's not getting any other stats. He's not getting assists, and he's not getting rebounds. He's not getting steals. He's not getting anything else. So, 4.6, Osman's kind of a tough play in this spot. There's not a small forward that you can load up here for Detroit. Markieff Morris ruled out. Luke Kennard ruled out. And a value play like Kevin Porter is out as well. So Osman should see bigger minutes, and he's like a Bogdanovich play in this spot where he has to score to get you value. Kevin Love at 7.2. Duambier, this guy's price tag's gone just ridiculously through the roof in 2 games. It's 2 games that's done it. Nobody knows who the hell the guy is. He breaks down the scene against the Clippers, having played 9 minutes as his max prior to that. And he puts up 26 fantasy points with a double-double in 27 minutes. He follows it up against Golden State, playing 38 minutes. Another double-double, 16 and 10 for 38 fantasy points. The Laker game, he had 34 minutes again, and that's a, huge market to watch that game. And then just the other night against Cleveland, 33 minutes, 15 points, 2 rebounds. 25.4. At 5.7, it's a tough play. It's a tough play, but it seems like he could get you 5x tonight in this spot. I think he can get you 27 to 28 fantasy points, and if he plays bigger minutes, the game stays close. He stays out of foul trouble. The ceiling is there for him to get you, a 7x return. 38 is his ceiling so far. But I said it 2 days ago. The first thing I said about the slate 2 days ago was the first thing that I saw that comes to my mind is that every single time Cleveland plays Detroit, it seems like Kevin Love kills them. I had zero exposure to Kevin Love that night, and he put up 45.8 fantasy points. He just seems to play well against Detroit. I don't know why it is, but he just seems to play well against Detroit. There's no Blake Griffin here. There's not really a matchup for him. Thompson is going to play against Drummond. There's not really a guy to match up with him. Duambier is going to match up with him, but it's a young guy in the league against a very skilled Kevin Love. And 7.2 seems very fair for a 5x to 5.5x return with upside. It does seem like 45.8, maybe 50 is the ceiling here, because in 36 minutes he had 30 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. He almost played a perfect game when you talk about from the field. He went 12 of 15. He was 2 of 2 for the line. Mentioned the 9 rebounds and 4 assists, and he also threw a steal in there. So that was a close game. It's a 115-113 loss. He played 36.4 minutes. It kind of seems like, that's pretty good for Kevin Love, the 45.8 he returned there. So, don't load Love up looking for a 70-point game tonight. He went 12 of 15. It's a pretty close to perfect game, and 2 of 2 from the line, and grabbed 9 boards. You can expect the 9 boards. I just don't know if you can expect him to go 12 of 15. I don't know if there's more shots with the way Sexton is handling the basketball. You also have Tristan Thompson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, if this game repeats itself, just expect 40, I would say, is pretty safe. 50 would be, you'd be sitting really pretty and really happy with 50 from Kevin Love tonight. I don't know how probable that is. I would say 40 is probably what you're going to get. But I will also tell you this. Okay, this is a 4-game slate. You don't have to necessarily this is more about getting the plays right than it is about the value, to be honest with you. The more you widen the slate out, the more games you add to the slate, it becomes more about making sure you don't miss and you get the return out of the player. You've got to get the play right. You can't miss here and return a 0 on somebody, but you also, because people are going to bottleneck to certain plays, you don't have to get the 6 to 7x return out of your entire lineup. You can miss the value, and if Kevin Love got you 35 tonight, it may still be enough at 5x to take something down. So, keep that in mind. Christian Wood at 4.4. I don't know how viable Christian Wood is right now. With Drummond playing, his minutes are sporadic. With kind of the emergence here of Duambier, Christian Wood's kind of taking a back seat. But he's, as a tournament play, as a dart, if you want to get 1 or 2 lineups with him tonight, I wouldn't hate it. It's just the minutes are all over the place. It's not a play that I would say is, him returning you 24 is going to be difficult, I think. The probability is difficult. The opportunity could be difficult if he doesn't get the minutes, and we can't really predict the minutes because they're all over the place. And with Blake Griffin out over the last 4 games, it's been Duambier who's been returning the minutes there. Drummond again at 10.9. Look, Drummond is in a smash spot just like he was the other night, where he played 38 minutes and got 60.5 fantasy points. Drummond's been on a tear. He has 1 dud, really, since about the 20th of December. If you go back to the entire month of December, less than 40 points 4 times. He had 32.4 against the Clippers, a dud against Washington in 24 minutes. He had 26 fantasy points. New Orleans, he played 24 minutes, had 24 fantasy points. And he had 39.2 against San Antonio on December 1st. Outside of those 4 games and the 2 games he set out, he's gotten you at least 40. Multiple 50-point outings. 51 against Golden State, 52 against Utah, 55 against Chicago, 51 against Toronto, 52 against Dallas, 59 against Milwaukee. And then the 60-point outings. December 3rd against Cleveland, 63.8. Against the Pacers, who every center in the world seems to just smash, 66.9. 62.1 against San Antonio, and 60.5 the other night against Cleveland, who he's playing again tonight. So 2 times this year against Cleveland, he's returned 60-point games. I'm not the only asshole out there that's going to tell you that Drummond's got 60 points twice this year against Cleveland, meaning that plenty of people are going to be on Drummond tonight. It's 10.9. It's a smash spot. Can you fill up the roster the way you want to? Because a lot of people are going to want to put Westbrook and Drummond in there. Westbrook because of the narrative, Drummond because of the spot, and then I think that's a good spot where people are going to start their builds today. Let me get Drummond, let me get Westbrook. I want to play the narrative. Then who else can I fit in around? I don't like doing things that way. Let the position sort itself out, okay? Because there is value in the next game, Boston at Philadelphia. Embiid is out. Robert Williams is out. Al Horford's price is all the way down to $5,400. Daniel Tice is at $4,300. And we know Mike Scott has played well in this spot where he has started for Embiid. And the crazy thing about Mike Scott, right, is that Mike Scott gets minutes. And I'll use the Aaron Holiday, TJ McConnell example, okay? If you looked at the game log here and you listened to what I said about McConnell and Aaron Holiday and finding out who's going to get kind of the increase here, Aaron Holiday has continued to get this pretty much the same minutes he's gotten with or without Brogdon on the floor. The increase went to McConnell, usage-wise and minutes-wise. Mike Scott's already playing 17 to 20 minutes with no production. I mean, I'm talking no production. You look at his player card, and he's got, 6.3, 6.6, 1.4, 4.4, 8.2, 9.6. 19.3 and 13.4 over the last kind of 2 weeks is his best output in 17 minutes. He played 20 minutes the other night against Oklahoma City. What happened against Oklahoma City? Embiid dislocated his finger. With Embiid, that's what these games where I'm telling you these minutes, Embiid's on the floor, right? Embiid's playing, he's in the rotation. Mike Scott gets run already. The difference here, though, is that he's going to get a little increase in minutes because he's already getting run. But production-wise, he moves up a notch on the totem pole. And he'll fill up some rebounds, and he'll get you a few more points. He may get you a couple block shots. And at 3.5, I mean, I think Mike Scott's going to be the default power forward number 2 today. I think people know this. I don't know if people necessarily know the funnel I'm talking about of how, he's already getting minutes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Scott's in a really good spot. We've seen it already before. I would suspect he'll be kind of default chalk here. Al Horford is a guy that has played center his entire life. He's playing power forward. And even when he played center, he was kind of playing power forward at Boston. You have to go back to Atlanta when he was paired with Millsap, where he was playing true center and Millsap was a power forward there. Al Horford, I think, gets you a huge increase today. I think it's a crush spot for Horford because of the fact that, number one, there's a narrative there also, right? He's playing against his old team. He didn't play against them in Boston. He's going to play against them today. But where I think you get the increase from Horford today is I think you get the increase in the assists. Because he's going to get the ball. There's usage to be made up without Embiid. And Horford is probably the best passing big man outside of Jokic in the NBA. So I think you're going to see, 3 to 5 extra assists out of Horford today, a few extra points, and at 5.4, there's a very good probability that he returns 6x on his value today. And pairing these two, Horford and Mike Scott at the power forward position today, I don't think is a bad idea. I don't think it's a bad idea. Here's the other thing. Too Short had a song back in the day called Don't Fight the Feeling. And what that is going to be is the feeling to me in this spot is Joel Embiid is out. Ben Simmons gets a huge increase in usage. Ben Simmons has been playing extremely well. A couple of monster games he's coming off of. You take a look at the run he's been on since right before Christmas: 53.1, 57.4, 43.3, 50.9. A dud here against Indiana at 31.5. He still had 18 and 10. He just had any assists. Excuse me. Monster triple-double against Houston. 29, 13, and 11 for 79.1. And then going into the Oklahoma City game, what I said was, if you'll recall, he had 4 blocks and 3 steals against Houston, and you couldn't count on that part, but the triple-double numbers, the scoring, the rebounds, the assists, you could, and I thought 50 against Oklahoma City was a pretty good bet. You got 48 fantasy points. So he's been on a really good run. He's going to see an increase in usage with no Embiid today. Don't fight that feeling. I know that everybody wants to load up Westbrook, and there could be enough value on the slate tonight to put Simmons and Westbrook together because you've got a Mike Scott, because you've got some other guys you can put out there. But Ben Simmons is in a really good spot here. He's in a really good spot. So, Mike Scott, Al Horford, Ben Simmons, all in good spots. Now, on the flip side of this, Kemba Walker at 7.1. Marcus Smart's 5,000. Jaylen Brown, 6,600. Gordon Hayward, 6,000. And you got Tatum here at 6,900. Cantor, this is a crush spot for this kid again. Problem is Tice, right? And, I may build one lineup tonight that's got Horford and Scott, and another lineup that's got Tice and Scott. And if I go Horford and Scott, I may throw Cantor in that mix and then look for maybe a Drummond combination in another lineup where you've got like Drummond, Scott, and Tice. Because I think this is where you want to live with the exposure that this game. And maybe try, if you could, you may be able to sneak in with those combinations, Simmons and Westbrook. That's kind of the way that I'm feeling you should build these out. Because the other guys here, outside of Gordon Hayward, I don't think that you can really get into, Tatum. They all suffer huge losses in usage with Kemba Walker on the floor. Without Kemba Walker, and I think I touched on this yesterday in Discord, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum all see a huge increase. They get a boost without Walker. The one that suffers without Walker is Gordon Hayward. And I gravitated to Hayward yesterday late. It just happened that Troy Brown was a better play than Hayward was, and I didn't get as much Hayward as maybe I wanted to, and it worked out. It worked out. Brown had 41.7. Hayward had 30, I think, which was a 5x return on. He had 32.1, so he went more than 5x. But Brown was a little bit better play, and he's a little cheaper. And I'm talking about Troy Brown, not Jaylen Brown. But in that scenario, the one who benefits the most with Kemba Walker on the floor is Gordon Hayward. So, does that hold up again tonight? It's held true so far over the course of the season. I don't know if it holds true again tonight. But Hayward would be the other guy of these mid-tier plays from this game that I would like to get some exposure to. I'm not that big on the rest of them. Tobias Harris, I think, is a decent play, but I'd rather play Gordon Hayward over Tobias Harris. Small forward as a whole, you could probably lock this game in at small forward because we've got news now that Eric Gordon has become questionable for whatever reason. The news on Eric Gordon. I'll touch on Eric Gordon when we get to that game. So that's kind of where I'm at from the first the first TNT game. The game off the radar, Portland at Minnesota. Towns is a game-time decision. Hassan Whiteside, a game-time decision. What sucks about this is that this game tips off an hour after lock. Minnesota's been kind of hit or miss on letting us know what's going to happen with Towns. And like I'll say, kind of just copy and paste what I said 2 days ago. Coming off the injuries, I would think there would be some sort of a minutes limit of some sort. And I think where they're probably out at with this now is in the testing phase. He's got an injury. He probably has some swelling or fluid in there. And, he gets a little workout in, and then they kind of see the next day how the knees responded. And if it's swelling up, we're still retaining fluid. It's just taking this out another day. The longer this goes with Towns, I think the more probable it becomes that he needs to have a procedure done to get something cleaned up. And just look, from me, from being a coaching standpoint, I'll tell you this. A knee injury where there's not a tear of a ligament that says you're going to be out for this amount of time because you need surgery and rehab, an irritation or an irritating knee injury, typically what's going on is there's some soreness, there's some irritation that's caused by some inflammation, and something that's going on in the knee that's not a tear, or maybe it's something like maybe there's some minor tissue torn in there. You're looking at inflammation and fluid, and you're testing it out with a little bit of a workout, and you're seeing how the knee responds to it the next day. And if the knee swells up, then you kind of start the process over again, right? The old RICE: rest, ice, compression, elevation. So if that continues to go on with Towns, where I have to believe they're in this process because they haven't said he's going to have surgery, they haven't said he has a serious knee injury, I have to believe that it's an irritation and inflammation issue, and it's not responding well. Each time that they go out there and try to work him out, it swells back up, it gets sore, there's irritation in there. So at some point in time, the metal's going to meet the road, and they're going to say, we're going to shut Towns down because we need to go in there and do some sort of minor procedure to clean it up, because the knee just won't stop swelling up or retaining fluid. So either he's going to play soon because the knee resolves itself with the irritation and fluid being gone, and it responds well where it doesn't swell up after exertion, or they shut him down and they go in there for a small procedure and clean it up. We don't know because they're not being very forthright with information. They're just saying that he's missing it because he has a left knee issue, and he's a game time decision. The we'll see how he warms up part, I don't buy that crap. Because if it's we'll see how he warms up, then it's not swelling. So, now let's just see, how he feels when he warms up. I just don't buy that. I don't buy that part. I mean, hey, you woke up in the morning, it's swollen, we're going to get some treatment, see if we get the swelling out of it. Can you move it around? It's still sore. Okay, you're not playing today. We got to repeat the process. So I don't buy that part of it. We'll see how he warms up. We'll see, maybe at shoot around, they're trying to see if, when he comes in the morning, what it looks like. I just don't think we're going to know, and I've probably spent more time on Towns than I wanted to. He hasn't played since December 18th. But the minutes limit wouldn't be because of the injury. The minutes, because they'll know. The minutes limit would be more about he's missed, 15 games or whatever it is. If he plays today, he'd probably see 25 to 30 minutes, and it's a crush spot because everybody is crushing Portland from the center spot. If Whiteside can't play, who's a game time decision with an illness, you got to get exposure to this spot. That's going to be the difficult thing to figure out because, do you burn a lineup with Zhang, anticipating Towns gets rolled out, and then Zhang's kind of useless, and vice versa. Towns is useless and gets you a 0. You can't have that. So I would recommend full fade of this spot. I think that ownership on both those guys would be super low because we don't know. And the closer we get to lock without knowing if Towns is going to play, then the more reduced the ownership will fall on Zhang. Either way, it's a crush spot. Covington at 6,000, decent spot. But the guy that I really like to play here is Jeff Teague. And I think that Teague makes a good pairing with Westbrook or Simmons in a lineup if you don't want to play them together. 5.6. Napier at 4.9. These guys are both good plays here in this spot. Lillard is a really good contrarian tournament play. We've seen guys like D'Angelo Russell go in there and just light up Minnesota from the point guard position. So, McCollum, I'm not a big McCollum guy. You're never going to get me to play McCollum. If McCollum goes nuts, I'm usually going to miss out on that because he's just so dependent on scoring. Not saying he can't go off here at 6.7, but he's probably got to score. If you just look at his game logs, if he doesn't score points, he doesn't really return value. 37 minutes against Phoenix, 25 points he scored for 39.4 fantasy points. So, that's only 2 rebounds and 6 assists. So there's plenty of games where he gets you 2 or 3 assists and 2 or 3 rebounds and he scores you 30 points and he comes up with, 37 fantasy points. He's really dependent on the scoring part of it. He has picked the assists up this year, which makes him a little bit more of a borderline play. If he was 6,000 on the slate, I would probably really like him. I just don't know if he can return me 40 tonight in this spot. He'd have to score 30 points, which if Whiteside is out, I think that would make McCollum a good play. But we'll have to wait and see in the game locks at 5 o'clock, an hour after lock. So on DK, you can keep those options open with the swaps. Kent Bazemore continues to get minutes at 3.9. He's a really good play tonight at the small forward spot. He's going to play between 25 and 35 minutes. He just hasn't scored a lot. The last 10 games or so, 3 points, 6 points, 9 points, 6 points, 9 points, 5 points, 7 and 7. So he's not scoring the basketball, and he's not getting enough of the other stats. He's like a poor man's CJ McCollum who's not scoring the basketball. He has a ton of upside, and he can score, but he's a low man on the totem pole. I think he becomes a really good play, though, if Whiteside is out because extra shots become available. So, Bazemore's a guy to keep an eye on as well at 3.9. And Carmelo's playing well, man. You got to give it to this guy. He's old man River, and he's played. This is a really good sign for Portland. Portland's just not winning basketball games. But, I've got Carmelo as my 3rd overall small forward. And we'll talk about my rankings in a minute. Here it is, the last game of the night, Houston at Oklahoma City. Gallinari has been ruled out of this one. And when Gallinari is out, load up Gilgeous-Alexander. Chris Paul is such a gritty player. He's just getting old. He's playing a lot of minutes. He's playing 33 minutes plus a night. He's scoring the basketball. The assist numbers are the ones that are sporadic. Those are the numbers you could really count on from Chris Paul in the past. They're just sporadic. And I think a lot of that has to do with playing alongside Gilgeous-Alexander, who's really a point guard who's playing the off guard. There's also Dennis Schroeder there, another point guard who plays, he plays a blended spot, really. He plays some point guard. He plays some shooting guard. They've got rotational sets where they'll play Schroeder and Gilgeous-Alexander together. They'll play the 3 of them together, and they'll play Paul and Gilgeous-Alexander together. So, you've got 3 really good guards. Chris Paul is obviously the best one of them. Number 2 is Gilgeous-Alexander. Number 3 is Schroeder. But do you want to play Chris Paul without Joel Embiid? And what I mean is, without Joel Embiid on the slate, do you want to play Chris Paul over Ben Simmons, who we know is going to get an uptick in usage? If you played Chris Paul, I would say that the one you would want to pair him with would be Tobias Harris. Because you would be banking on Simmons having the worst game of the 2 between the 2 guys that probably see the biggest uptick in usage for the Sixers without Embiid, which is Simmons and Harris. If you're going to bank on Chris Paul having returning you a better value than Simmons does, then you would be banking on Harris being the guy who's the beneficiary of that. So if you built the Chris Paul lineup, I would most likely pair him with Tobias Harris. But those are the three guards. Those are the three. From a fantasy relevant standpoint, those are the three guys for Oklahoma City that are the ones you want to get exposure to tonight. Outside of that, Darius Baisley, 3.6. This guy's going to either make people money tonight or he's going to burn people because there's always somebody who comes up like Abdel Nadar that comes out of nowhere and gets some run. He's been getting minutes all season long. Okay, the difference now is that he's been playing between 11 and 14, and over the last kind of 3 or 4 games, you've seen a spike in minutes. He played 29 against Toronto before returning to his regular 12 and 12 against Dallas and San Antonio. Then he got 20 against Cleveland, 18 against Philly, 14 against Brooklyn. The 14 against Brooklyn is what he's going to get. It's just what he's going to get. And sometimes these guys come in and they knock down a few shots, and that's why you see in the same minutes they had a little bit better night. But, is this where you want to go tonight? Darius Baisley, if you need salary relief, it's a guy you can say is going to get you 14 to 24 minutes. You don't have any idea how many he's going to get you beyond that, and I would say the floor on that you could guarantee is 12 minutes. And this is a contrast in styles. I don't know how many of you guys watch boxing, but sometimes when you see a, highly anticipated fight, it just duds because the two guys fighting their styles are completely different, and it makes for a boring fight. You have a grind down team in Oklahoma City, and you've got a team that wants to get a layup / dunk or a 3 within the first 10 to 11 seconds in the shot clock. So it's a real contrast in styles here. And it may make for an ugly, ugly, ugly basketball game. And I don't know in an ugly basketball game if Darius Baisley is a guy that I want to load up. But I'm going to tell you right now that this guy's being talked about all over the place. 12 minutes is what you could probably count on. That's probably what you can count on. And in 12 minutes, are you saying that he is a 1.75 fantasy point per minute? I mean, that would mean this guy's got to go in 12 minutes. He's got to go get you. There has to be a possession where he gets you a steal and a bucket, and that would net you 5. And then there's got to be another possession, or maybe he gets you a block shot. I mean, these are not things that, you want to be, from a statistical standpoint, that you don't want to be banking on. You want to bank on the minutes and the shots and the usage, not the ancillary. The ancillary stuff is, you need it. That's the upside. Like a Trevor Ariza, you're saying, hey, look, if we know Ariza's going to go out there and he's going to rebound. We know he's probably going to get us a couple of steals because he's so long, gets in passing lanes. And if this guy can get you a few extra shots and knock a couple extra shots down, he's going to just destroy value. Completely different when you're looking at it from the other side. Like this guy's probably going to score 4 or 5 points tonight. He's probably going to get 3 or 4 rebounds. He's probably going to play 12 to 14 minutes. And I really need him to get me 2 block shots and 2 steals. You can't bank on that. You can't bank on the block shots and steals. So, he'll probably go nuts tonight and play 30 minutes because I'm saying that. But I don't know if where the value's at tonight, if Baisley's the guy that I want to pin my pipe dreams and aspirations to. So that's the slate. Where I have guys ranked out right now may surprise you at the point guard spot. Excuse me. I've got Lillard number 1. I've got Lillard number 1 for a couple of reasons. He's going to be the lowest owned point guard on the slate. Period. He's going to be the lowest owned point guard on the slate. Westbrook is going to be the highest owned point guard on the slate. So I've got Lillard 1 because I think that they can get you about the same, and their ceilings on the season, Lillard is 63.1 and Westbrook's is 65.3. They're the exact same price. And the reason I have Lillard number 1 over Westbrook is because of the same exact price and Lillard will be lower owned, make a second lineup. And what I mean by that is you make your best lineup and it's got Westbrook in there, make a second lineup, and the only player you swap out is Westbrook for Lillard. Westbrook, I have 2. Ben Simmons, I have 3. Napier, I have 4. Chris Paul, 5. Derrick Rose, 6. That's the point guard spot. The shooting guard spot tonight, Gilgeous Alexander, 1. James Harden, 2. And the reason I have Harden 2 is I think that if you're playing a 5-entry max tonight, you're playing single entry tournaments, in one of those, fade Westbrook and play Harden. Everybody's going to play Westbrook tonight. It's a 4-game slate. How are you going to be different? Fade Westbrook and play Harden. That's easily the best way to do it. Right now, I have Gilgeous Alexander 1, Harden 2. I have Bruce Brown number 3. Wiggins is 4. Don't like Wiggins that much. McCollum is 5. I probably would flop those 2 and possibly bump McCollum to 3 if Whiteside is ruled out. Small forward, Tobias Harris, I have 1. Anthony 2. Hayward 3. And then it's kind of a free-for-all beyond that because I need to know what's going to happen with Eric Gordon. And here's the news on Eric Gordon. He's been added to the injury report with a sore right knee. This sore right knee crap, for one, it's the NBA. Are they telling us the truth? That's always the first thing that pops in my mind. It's the second half of a back-to-back. Are they telling us the truth? Because in the normal world, if you have a sore right knee, you've got something going on in that knee. Maybe there's a little swell. There's got to be something beyond soreness, like swelling, for you to say you're not going to play. So I don't think it looks good for Gordon to play with a sore knee on the second end of a back-to-back. And if he doesn't play, then Daniel House is a guy that I like a lot. I think that at the shooting guard position, Ben McLemore would come into play at 3.6 as well if he's not going to play. So Eric Gordon, hopefully we get news on this before lock happens, but that's kind of where I've got, the 3 guys I like the most there. I think that the 4th guy that I would throw in this mix would be James Ennis. Didn't talk about him when we talked about Boston and Philadelphia, but Ennis is a guy that I would throw in there as well. Without Embiid, he's a real scrappy guy. I like James Ennis a lot. I loved playing him last year when nobody played him at all when he was with Houston. Ennis is the other guy I'd throw in their power forward spot. I think number 1 is Mike Scott. And number 2, I think, is Mike Muscala. And the reason I'm going to say Muscala is the same reason that I like Harden and the same reason that I like Damian Lillard is because the 4-game slate. And where are you going to be different? Where are you going to be different? So, Mike Muscala, we saw him with Philadelphia last year. And we've seen what Muscala can do, right? We've seen Muscala with, I believe, Atlanta. And in the previous 2 games, he's played 12 and 17 minutes. So, pay attention to the Eric Gordon news. We know that from Oklahoma City's standpoint, Gallinari's been ruled out. We know default-wise that that's been Gilgeous Alexander. But if Muscala is going to get some minutes, like 17 minutes, at 3.6, you can pivot off Mike Scott, play Mike Muscala, who nobody and their mother is going to be on. I promise you. I just think, it's just a pivot play. That's what it is. But, Daniel Tice, I like him a lot. I think he'll be popular. And this is going to screw the whole slate up because Gallinari has now been upgraded to questionable. Was ruled out earlier, and now He's been upgraded questionable. This coming in off of their shoot-around. Gallinari evidently wants in on this Russell Westbrook return as well. Doesn't want to miss the TNT game, apparently. But look, Kevin Love is a guy that I really like. Tice, I like. Mike Scott, I like. Al Horford, I like. I think Covington is the lowest owned of them all, and that would be the fifth guy. Easy way to sort through the shit there. Center spot, again, this depends so much on what's going to happen with the two big centers on the slate. From a pricing standpoint, you've got Towns and Whiteside is number 2, number 3. Drummond, to me, is number 1. We don't know what's going to happen with Towns and Whiteside. Embiid ruled out. Capella, I like Capella again in this spot. I don't think people are going to gravitate to Capella because of the value that's on the board. But Capella's a guy I like also. I like Cantor a little bit. Kyle O'Quinn is way off the board at 4.1. He has gotten a run without Embiid on the floor. It's been, but I think that when he's gotten that run, it's really been without Horford and Embiid. We'll have to see who they say is going to start. The news to monitor is the centers. What happens with Towns? What happens with Whiteside? Do we get that information prior to lock? I really don't think you can play Gorgui Dieng. He's the top center on the slate, okay? Right now, Gorgui Dieng is center number 1. He's center number 1 on the slate because if Towns is ruled out and if Whiteside is ruled out, Portland already gets smashed to get centers. They won't have a true center. The big guys that Portland will be left with, you're going to roll Anthony Tolliver out there and Moses Brown, Naz Reid, Jordan Bell, Noah Vonleh. Those are the guys these two teams have to work with. So, Dieng right now, with the uncertainty of Towns, is number 1. Capella to me is number 3. Drummond is number 2. The rest of these guys, it's kind of a domino effect. Figure out what the news is, and then we can go from there. I'll be in Discord close to lock. If you have questions, I will give my input on news that breaks and how it affects a slate. I'll be back tomorrow for a bigger slate. Until then, be cool, keep it cashing. Peace out.